Welcome to the Daco channel, where we dive deep into home decor inspiration for every space. If you love transforming small spaces into charming, functional masterpieces, then you're in the right place. Today's video is all about vintage decor hacks for tiny homes. We're going to show you how to maximize your tiny home's charm and style with vintage touches that won't crowd your space. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, and leave a comment below to let us know what vintage decor hacks you love most. One of the easiest ways to bring vintage charm into a tiny home is through furniture. Opt for pieces that are both functional and stylish. A vintage armchair or a repurposed wooden table can add character without overwhelming your space. The key is balance. Choose timeless pieces that bring personality without taking up too much room. Vintage textiles are a great way to introduce charm and warmth into your tiny home. Look for patterns like florals, stripes, or checks for curtains, throw pillows, and rugs. Vintage fabrics not only add comfort but create a nostalgic vibe, making your small space feel inviting and cozy. Don't be afraid to upcycle old items into something new. Vintage finds from thrift stores, flea markets, or even your own attic can be transformed into functional decor. A vintage suitcase can become a unique side table, while an old window frame can serve as a rustic mirror. This will not only save you money but also add one-of-a-kind pieces to your home. Vintage storage boxes are both functional and aesthetic. Stack them to create a charming focal point or place them under tables and beds to keep your space organized. Wooden crates, antique trunks, or metal boxes bring an old-world charm while providing a solution to your storage needs. Lighting is key in any space, and vintage light fixtures are the perfect way to add character to your tiny home. Look for antique lamps, chandeliers, or sconces to give your space a warm, inviting glow. Vintage lighting not only illuminates but also becomes a statement piece in your room. Open shelving is a great way to showcase vintage items in a small space. Whether it's an antique clock, vintage teacups, or retro books, open shelves allow you to display your treasures while also saving on floor space. Just make sure to keep it organized to avoid clutter. A vintage-inspired gallery wall can instantly elevate the charm of any small room. Mix and match old paintings, prints, and photographs in mismatched frames. This creates visual interest without overwhelming your space. Plus, it's an easy way to add personality to your tiny home. Mirrors are a great tool to make a small space feel larger. Vintage mirrors, with their intricate frames and charming designs, can add elegance while also helping to reflect light and create the illusion of more space. Hang them in strategic spots to maximize both style and functionality. A vintage rug can completely transform the feel of your tiny home. Whether it's a colorful Persian rug or a subtle kilim, these pieces bring texture, warmth, and a pop of color to your space. They also make small areas feel more inviting and cozy, helping to define separate spaces in an open layout. A vintage wall clock isn't just functional, it's also a statement piece. Look for antique wall clocks or classic mid-century modern designs to add character to your walls. Clocks bring a sense of timelessness to your tiny home while keeping things practical. In a tiny home, every inch counts. Look for vintage furniture that doubles as storage. For example, an old chest can serve as both a coffee table and a place to stash blankets, or a vintage bench with built-in drawers can provide extra seating and storage in one. Layering vintage textiles, like blankets, quilts, and throws, is a simple way to add both warmth and style to your small home. These pieces don't just serve a practical purpose, they also bring texture and color to your space, making it feel cozier. Wallpaper isn't just for large homes. In tiny homes, vintage-inspired wallpaper can be a wonderful way to introduce bold patterns and colors without crowding your space. Look for wallpaper with florals, stripes, or subtle geometric patterns to add charm and style. Vintage trim and molding are a great way to add subtle elegance to your tiny home. Consider installing vintage-style baseboards or crown molding to give your small space an elevated look. These details are often overlooked but can make a significant impact on the overall feel of your home. A tiny home doesn't have to be fully vintage to achieve that charming vibe. Mixing modern and vintage decor can create a balanced, eclectic look. For instance, pair a vintage chair with a modern table, or hang an antique mirror above a sleek contemporary console. This mix adds dimension and personality. You can make your tiny space feel cozier by hanging vintage fabrics or tapestries on the ceiling. This unexpected approach adds texture and warmth without taking up any floor space. A beautiful vintage fabric hanging from the ceiling can serve as both a decorative element and a way to make your space feel more intimate. For a cozy vintage vibe, choose lighting fixtures that add both style and function. Vintage-inspired lamps or light bulbs with a soft glow can create a relaxing atmosphere. Hang pendant lights or use table lamps to illuminate your space in a charming, nostalgic way. Vintage rugs add a touch of timeless elegance to any tiny home. Layer smaller vintage rugs in various textures and colors to create a rich, layered look. This also helps divide your tiny space into functional zones, adding both visual appeal and practicality. Even in the kitchen, vintage decor can shine. Vintage mugs, old-fashioned canisters, and retro dishware bring personality to your cooking space. Display them openly on shelves or counters to add vintage flair without sacrificing storage. Books are not only great for reading but also for adding personality and style to your tiny home. Vintage books, with their old-world charm, can be stacked on shelves, used as table decor, or simply placed around your home for that extra touch of nostalgia. Even in a tiny space, you can create a cozy reading nook by combining vintage furniture, soft textiles, and warm lighting. A vintage chair with a plush throw, alongside a small vintage lamp, creates the perfect spot for reading and relaxation. And that wraps up our vintage decor hacks for tiny homes. I hope you found inspiration for adding charm and style to your small space with vintage elements. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What vintage decor piece are you most excited to add to your tiny home? Thanks for watching.